I guess let's start to get into the conversation about the accessibility of all this stuff, all these sports books, right? Like we're seeing on every broadcast, they're having betting lines pregame. We're having sponsors sponsored by DraftKings, FanDuel, blah blah blah, and how much that's changed. What's your kind of opinion on that? Uh, just based on what we're seeing now, like that players are getting into this stuff.
I've always felt that baseball taking on sponsorships from sports books is just extremely hypocritical because I feel like you're just asking for bad news, especially if you're going to have a rule that says players are not allowed to bet on any baseball game in any amount whatsoever, no matter if it's their team or not, and it's a full time ban, to then be like, you're not allowed to do this, and we mean it by like black and white, here it is. You're not allowed to bet. Meanwhile, here's our sponsor, the thing you're not allowed to do. That just seems completely off to me. So I don't feel like it's always rubbed me the wrong way seeing it. I understand baseball brings in a boatload of money from these sponsorships, and betting is more and more of a thing, and it is a way to bring in non-baseball fans or maybe people that have very minimal interest in baseball because you throw a little money on the game, you're suddenly invested in it. I know one of the ways I get into March Madness every year, even more than I did in the past, is by filling out a bracket and seeing how my picks do. So it is a way to bring in other fans. It just rubs me the wrong way to see baseball be so against betting and then take in the sponsorship money anyway.
Yeah, I mean, as you kind of said, I think it has to happen. And this is where I'll throw it to you, John, because I think there is, despite all this happening with all these players and maybe them trying to itch, or scratch an itch rather, and this urge to do it. I mean, there is a lot of good with sports books being a part of these major leagues now. So, what's your take on that?
My take on it is the fact that, you know, look, I'm going to read the exact number of what MLB is projected to make. According to AmericanGaming.org, uh, Major League Baseball stands to make this year 1.1 billion, not million, billion dollars from sports betting ads. That's a huge number, and the regardless of how we feel about this rule, this is a business entity. Major League Baseball is a business entity, and they have to put out sponsorships. And one of the biggest factors of sports in terms of fan experience is sports betting, you know? So to not want to have a slice of that pie, when you're set to make 1.1 billion dollars from this is huge. I mean, I understand you can see it as hypocritical, but their main purpose is to protect the integrity of the game and to also make money. Regardless, bottom line, that's what they walk away with, is they have to do both those things in order to protect the sport and to also make investors happy. Regardless of how we feel. So, in
Uh,
terms of doing that, that's what this is making money. You know,
so I think from a standpoint of the money that's being made, or the revenue generated, the fan interest, I think all that is very positive, but it happens in baseball all the time, more than other sports. There's this whole thing of, well, the integrity of the game, blah blah blah, this and that. Like, Will, in your opinion, do you think the MLB, in just endorsing these sports books and having them as partners, is um you know I guess deterring that notion of the integrity of the game, or is it just when we have instances like we just had with Marcano?
It's such a tough area. It's hard for me to really put my foot down on one side or the other because I see both sides fairly evenly in that sense. I because I think John's right in the end. It's a business. The business aspect of it comes first. Um, it's still very clear in the rules. You can't bet. Nothing has changed now. But I mean, it. I have to lean a little towards it. Does feel like the integrity is somewhat being questioned if baseball is so against something and then is allowed to bring that in as much as they are into baseball facilities and take in the money. Because then it starts to raise the questions to me of, all right, if they're going to let betting in like they are, then does that potentially change the punishment for players? Because I know the whole argument about Pete Rose and whatnot, about whether or not he should be brought back into baseball. And I, for the longest time, would have said he broke the rules. It's a shame he did what he did, but he should be basically kicked out of baseball. But to see then baseball bring in the sports betting stuff, it's like, well, you just kicked out Pete Rose. Now you kicked out Marcano, whatever his name is. I'm gonna forget it, so I'm not even gonna try to say it. Um, the
Try to say his
Pirates
first
now
name.
Padres guy. Nope, Tuca Pizza. I can say that. But the seeing baseball bring in the betting sponsorships and the money and having it be so prevalent in baseball games now, I do have to wonder if they're starting to cross the line into the other way and be like, all right, is it maybe now time to consider a slight rule change and bring back in some of those players that have been kicked out?
No, I
I mean, it's
100% disagree with you. Hey,
I was gonna say
go ahead.
it's on the other side too. It's like, do they? I mean, I don't think they can take a step back because now they're kind of all in, and I think you have to be in or out with like, all right, we want sports betting to be a part of our culture and this and that. But I mean, you're seeing it, dude. You like go to games and they have like the friggin' lines up on like the betting lines up on like the screens. Like there's
Mm-hmm.
some places have spots where you can like bet or like not that you can bet there, but like you can there's a whole thing about it, right? Like, and I just feel like
Hold on, hold on. We
it's
are
does it
confusing
cross a line?
integrity of the game. We're confusing that term. The term integrity of the game is in terms of knowing that nothing is being done outside of on field play that will impact the outcome of this game. Regardless of whether somebody phones it in for a play or whatever, that's a totally different issue. But knowing that a gambler in Vegas does not have control of the outcome of this game, that's what integrity of the game is. Not whether or not it's the moral hypocrisy or not, however you want to look at it. That's a totally different issue if you want to take that stance. But integrity of the
But I
game
think
is based on outcomes.
right, but I think it bleeds a little bit into each other when you talk about now you have these athletes that are a part of it. Like I think obviously from a fan perspective that's one thing, but if you're talking about like and again, you're not just talking about baseball. Like so you have in 20 I think it was May 2018 is when the Supreme Court uh, had taken down the axe for sports betting, and then I mean right away in 2019, an NFL player was suspended. There was cases in 2021 with MLS players. Calvin Ridley in 2022 gets suspended. Um, so like there's all these things. There was 5 players in 2023 in the NFL again. So I just feel like it kind of bleeds into each other when the prevalence of these sponsorships and it's everywhere and it's this and that they're pushing it so much. I think if players are getting involved because of those things, that's when it bleeds into each other. That's my counterpoint to that.
And that's an issue on the players, not on the business.
Right.
That's what
but
that is.
but but the culture of I think this culture of the integrity of the game I think gets affected because of that though.
Look, you baseball has been this way for 100 years. It hasn't changed on this stance for 100 years. If you don't know by now that baseball is going to feel very bad in terms of how they view you as a player gambling in their sport, that's on you, not on baseball. This was instituted in 1920. Okay, so this is 104 years. If you don't know by now, then shame on you. That's
I
my
just
my
feel
that's my
like,
stance.
yeah, I mean, and I understand that, but looking at it from a fan's perspective, though, right? Like if they're seeing, oh man, this guy just got suspended for life, and look at all these sports books, and blah blah
The
blah. I
fans
think
should be
that's what
pissed
I'm
off
kind
at
of
the player, not at MLB.
right.
That's not
No,
MLB didn't hand the guy his phone and be like, "Hey, make sure you go on DraftKings. Make sure you go on DraftKings. DraftKings, you can place a nice little bet
I
on
feel like
DraftKings."
you're misinterpreting what I'm saying. Though. I'm saying like it's just not a good. The MLB is put. If you're on the stance of okay, the MLB is pushing for all this stuff to be out, and it's bleeding into their players. I think that's when fans who maybe are not as informed on the matter, like I don't know if that's the right way to say it, but like they might look at it as like, oh, that's kind of messed up, like that this is happening, and it's not just oh, it's messed up on the MLB, it's just a messed up situation, which then kind of taints the integrity of the game, is what I'm kind of what along
I
lines of what
don't
I'm
I don't
saying.
think it taints the integrity of the game. I think it taints how they might view it more as a business rather than a kids game, which, in reality it's a business. That's what MLB is. You don't have guys staying in the same city for 35 years like back in the day. That's a totally separate thing. But either way, the point of the matter is that MLB now is more of a business than ever. So of course you have to look at it that way. You know,
Hmm.
you, you can't get personal about this. The fact of the matter is that these players are they were just dumb and did this. You know, MLB didn't tell them, "Hey, make sure that you're betting." They say every single year, it's posted in their locker room, in the clubhouse of every single MLB and minor league team, rule whatever, no betting. And obviously, that's putting it mildly, but you get the point. That it's posted. It's been this way for 100 years. They should know better. It shouldn't matter.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like there might. You're right. I think they should know better. I just think that again, maybe these guys have that urge, and it still doesn't make sense to me. And it'll never make sense to me, as we kind of already said. Like they're throwing away their whatever, however long career and however much money for something very very silly. I don't know the reason why they're doing it. I don't know if it is just because they are getting all this information and it looks great and they want to do. I don't know. I that's what I wonder. Uh, kind of a I don't want to say a random question. I'll give you Will, but something I was kind of thinking about is that um you know I believe the rules for most sports, and I try to double check this as we were talking, but a player can't bet on their sport, but they are allowed to bet
Mhm.
on other sports. So an MLB player could, I guess, bet on the NFL and be okay with that. Are you in the mind that that's okay? Because I mean, obviously, it's a completely different thing, but like there still could be some conflict of interest. Like, what's your thoughts on that?
My initial hunch is that I'm okay with them betting outside of the sport because they should be allowed to bet if they want for fun. Um, it does get trickier if maybe a superstar was involved because of how it seems like so many people are connected between sports and know one another. And so then I feel like if you're going to have to put a restriction on any type of player, you got to put a restriction on everyone. But there's been no set precedent that I can think of players intertwining between sports or crossing over whatever to try to affect an outcome. So therefore, I kind of just want to leave it right now as they're allowed to bet between sports if something were to come up down the line where it turned out that there texting Joe Schmo or whatever who plays another sport, and they're like, "Hey, I need you to do this so I can win a bet," and he does it, then that would potentially cause some major. That should then cause major changes to betting between sports if you're an athlete.
Yeah, and that I guess that was kind of my point. Like athletes know athletes, and not that I think it happens, but it's just an interesting thing because baseball is so you can't bet obviously whatever, and it's just like funny that they can really do it on other sports, and maybe I don't know how many athletes are doing that, or baseball players or whatever, but yeah, it's just kind of an interesting point with that, and I think the last kind of point for this I want to end on is overall, I think that sports betting is a good thing for, as John said, business wise, and I also think it's a good thing for the fans. As I said, I quite like enjoy sports. What? I can't talk. I like sports betting because again, it gets you into a into
Or are we
games
in
that you might
trouble?
not it gets you into games that you might not want to be into, and it causes it entertainment and sports. But again, we'll end with that on that point.